Out here we got my buddy's Gen 6 Glock 45, and we're contrasting it, comparing it to the Gen 5 Glock 45. Shooting them here in a few drills and stuff like that, and I gotta say, there is an issue. Today we will find out if the Gen 6 has departed from the qualities that we have grown to love with the previous generations and has become some sort of other animal to appease the market. So we're going to touch on some stuff that I don't think other people has went over, and we're going to see if Glock lovers are going to continue to love this new generation. All right, stand by. All right, so I think you've probably seen this already. It's standard. It comes with 3 magazines, a couple different back straps. My buddy put the medium on it. That feels pretty good. It's not as big as like a Gen 3 or Gen 4, but it does feel pretty decent for the medium. I tried the large on it, and it feels pretty good too. It's not that much different to go back and forth. So I don't like the feel of where my hand sits on the Gen 6 without the back strap as much as the Gen 5 without the back strap. I've been accustomed to the Gen 3 grip, but I'm seeing where folks have mentioned tendonitis and stuff like that for a long period of time. And after shooting my Zevs for so long, I do kind of like, I shoot the Gen 3's best as far as like tracking and return, but over the course of training, I will notice that I will get tendonitis a lot earlier. So I've been doing the trick, that so many people have been doing with, cutting the back strap. I could do without this beaver tail, take it or leave it, with the angle and everything. More like the Zevs, across the board, I can cross that platform back and forth, and I don't think I get as much pain. But so just stating that, the Gen 3 is probably the best and most conducive for the better shooting. You're just going to sacrifice a little bit to not deal with pain. So he's got the medium on here. I'm going to try it with the medium. Feels pretty good, just kind of pointing it, blind pointing it, seeing where it's naturally settling. When we shoot it a little bit more, we'll see how well it performs on the clock with a target. So on to the most notable difference between this generation is the grip. It's got a slight palm swell on either side, as you can kind of see. As you've probably seen on multiple videos. I'm usually late to the game, but here we are. I was worried that they were going to change it so much. I do like, and maybe it's because I am formed to the gun, but I kind of like the square profile on the front. It fits the front strap fits right here on the knuckles here, so I can reach the trigger and be in line and present to the target well. It just fits. It's a forward and back, forward, front strap, back strap, pressure, squeezing up into the beaver tail area there. I've been accustomed to that. However, I do have a Walther PDP, and that's what they kind of seem like they were going for with this new grip. However, I do like this better than the Walther. There's more purchase for your support hand, which is key. And for some reason, I don't understand. I've heard it explained with target grips or whatever, but that doesn't make sense because the Gen 2 doesn't have this garbage. But they always seem to have this indention up here at the top where your support hand engages most of its control up there. We deal with it as shooters, but I always fill that in with something so that I can have my pressure up at the topmost upper portion of the grip. But it could be for smaller hands, not touching the frame as they're on the trigger, but that's trivial. That's a low percentage for the option that they had to put in here. Just make the dang thing flat, all right? But it does feel pretty comfortable. I've done some presentations to the target to see if my natural point of aim is off. It doesn't seem to really affect it too much. So grip texture, it's actually pretty amazing, especially for factory. It's grippy. It's not overly aggressive, so you can carry this appendix. You know, all you tender bellies out there, it's not going to rip you up or anything like that. It's not going to try to grip your certain t-shirts or clothing or whatever. It's not going to do that. They did a good job with the grip texture as far as factory crap goes, that they have to adhere to market it towards all sorts of people. So tender bellies and rough hands will appreciate it. Get in there and sink that in there. Feels pretty darn good out of the box. Of course, you should stipple the thing anyway. We got this evil beaver tail right here. Look how that thing just juts out there. I thought I wouldn't like it, but I've drawn some with it and everything. I thought it would get in the way from either your claw grip or just kind of getting under there. It actually is not bad, and it's thinner than these other gens with the back strap, with that thick old back strap on there. I'm not minding it right now. You can get pretty high with it. You can get higher on this than you can the Gen 5 with that OEM backstrap. But so far, we'll kind of play with that. But as of right now, you can definitely smash somebody. That's a skull breaker right there. That would probably hurt. Jam this thing in somebody's throat or whatever. So it's a multi-use defensive weapon. The front serrations, deeper cut up here where your hand's going to go to charge the gun from a table start, or from, if you're into the carrying in a condition 3, you'll appreciate that. But I do like those serrations, feel really, really, really good, as opposed to the Gen 5s. It's still shallow. I usually add like grip tape on the top right here for manipulations, because you want consistency when you're charging your firearm, especially when you're doing it on the clock for competition or emergency manipulations and everything. You'll definitely appreciate these forward serrations. I don't know anybody that, unless the gun's too short, I really don't rack the gun like this. Or I try not to even touch my optic, because why put undue stress on it if you don't have to? You know what I mean? Save those times for an emergency where you have to go off, a doorway or something like that. But these rear serrations are really non-existent for me, unless the barrel's short, like a Glock 26. Yeah, definitely use that. I don't want to kind of go up here with that short barrel, but that's just me. You do you. But the front serrations, awesome. They started adding top serrations. But I've had an issue locking the slide back, and that's because of this extra border they put on the bottom of the slide stop. Now, most people, and it might work for most people, Most people have a low grip, and they'll index here on the bottom of the trigger guard and come up here under everything, which is fine, you know. And so they put that border on there so that in recoil and the slide reciprocating back, it doesn't prematurely lock on a full gun. That border there built up, it might help people, you know, people with a normal grip where it's like super low. I call it super low, but it's like other people's high. So I index with my middle finger underneath the trigger guard, and I just wrap my index finger around, and it locks here. Middle finger locks on this top knuckle, and grab the highest part of that frame as possible without touching the slide. But in doing so, I ride on top of the slide stop. So usually I have to do an AK reload from a Glock, which I'm good with, right? And when doing important manipulations with this, right, locking it open on a double feed, you know, especially, you know, single-handed manipulations, having that border underneath there stifles your ability to do those manipulations. But the border under there, probably going to work for most people, but high riders like myself, it doesn't really do anything except hinder manipulations. Up here at the front, the gas pedal, it's not big enough to be able to utilize in that fashion, but what I do like about it is it's a good index point for your trigger finger when it's not in manipulating the trigger. It tells me, yes, I'm, you know, during a mag change, I have it out of the trigger guard. And it also is enough of a shelf too, when you have a full mag and you're jamming in there on a closed slide, you do get some leverage on it instead of having a reload and it just slightly push your grip out of whack, and then you have to re-grip. This, you have a little bit of leverage here. Here's a tip. I usually just use the ejection port for that. So if I have a fully loaded magazine and I want to insert it on a closed slide, I use the top or the top of the barrel. All right, so the barrels, at least the G19 barrels across the platforms, they work, as you can kind of see in the videos that we put in here. So I tried with the Silencer Co. threaded barrel with a suppressor. I tried with a KKM Roland type comp, the KKM comp. I swapped out the Glock 47 barrel and put it in here, and it kind of protrudes out, but it still works. Yeah, I can definitely tell that was approximately 36 feet per second faster with the longer barrel in it. I could just feel it, but no, it works. I'm skeptical. There's a slight relief divot in the Gen 6 barrels, and I don't know if that's for the extractor, the new type extractor or whatever, but as a relief there, I don't know why it's there, but I do know that there's probably a reason for it. So actually swapping out the parts, use at your own risk. But it worked on that day that we were messing around with it. Like the great Brandon once said, I got 4 words for you: maritime cups. It's got them. So one thing Glock did was they listened to all the users' input, at least with this. So the undercut is fantastic. What this does for the user is all you have to do to hit the magazine release is basically move your middle finger. Now, see if I can do this here. Boom. Look how easy. All right. You don't have to change your grip or anything. So if you had smaller hands or shorter digits and you're trying to get it with your thumb, you don't have to do that anymore. When you're firing like this, all I have to do is just dummy round. Chill out. Ain't that cool? I'll do it slower for you, right? Didn't have to change my grip at all. All you're doing is just manipulating your middle finger up there, and this being relieved, undercut, helps you do so. Beautiful. So one thing that they did, they went back and reverted to the old guide rod for 9mm. Somebody that knew more than I did said, like the Gen 4, they had those multi-spring mechanisms for their guide rod that transferred over into Gen 5, mostly because of production issues, because they did at that time make 40 caliber and 45. Now that they've pretty much exclusively went to 9mm, they're not doing the old guide rods. They're doing, well, they're doing the old guide rods now. So it might be that might be a plus, because like if you're starting to manipulate or change out the guide rods to try to see how that affects your recoil and your splits and what that looks like in the dot in the window. You start to experiment, and it's going to be a lot easier to get the old style guide rods. Try the Gen 3 guide rod. I'm just going to shoot some doubles at this 10-yard target. It's a IDPA target. All right, so you might get some brass coming at you. All right. All right, seems to work all throughout the generations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The trigger had the trigger safety, right? And a lot of people that aren't used to shooting or don't have calluses on their finger, a long practice session and their trigger finger, it hurts just because it digs into them. This new trigger, it's sort of flat, profiled a little bit differently. It's raised enough to where you get an index point for where your trigger should be, your trigger finger should be, which is good. So that way you can be consistent by placing your trigger finger exactly on the spot that you want to operate the trigger. But it's not enough to where it digs in. It's kind of flattened, and it's also contoured, so it's round. So if you're placing your trigger finger into it and you're gliding over the face of the trigger, it rolls into place. It's not flat to where it catches and you start pulling the trigger back and it catches on the frame. So it's contoured pretty good so that if you slide your finger over the trigger, it's not catching on anything. I can roll my finger onto it. Don't usually do that, but I'm just saying, you know, some people do. You know, like if they have shorter fingers or whatever, and sometimes they roll on top of that and don't disengage the trigger safety. On this particular thing, it feels pretty darn good. So that is a good thing that they've done. All right, what you've been waiting for, all you trigger nerds, the mouth feel of the trigger. All right, so I'm going to compare it with the Gen 5. Got the stock Gen 5, stock Gen 6 here. So start the trigger process. Once you take up the little bit to overcome the little dongle thing here for the trigger safety, once you get past that point, it's a steady pull. All right, so start a little bit of a stack there, about midway through, got pressure, and there it is, a little bit, and breaks. All right, and that's just pulling the trigger, slightly adding pressure, slightly adding pressure. Let's go ahead and wipe through the trigger in one. So once I start adding pressure to the trigger, it's just going to keep going straight to the rear, and it's going to break. So here we go. Just going to start adding pressure, rolling through it. Boom, that's nice. That's how the trigger should be operated right here. Just starting to come back. You know you want to take the shot, so just start adding pressure. And once you start adding pressure, you consistently add the same pressure until it breaks. And then the trigger ends up feeling pretty smooth. All right, same here with this. I'm going to add pressure. This one's been shot more. Very similar. Standard Gen 5 feel. This is, you know, it feels about the same. And the trigger pull comes in between 4.5 and 4 3/4. So standard OEM trigger. I was scared that they were going to try to change a whole bunch of stuff, but it feels very workable if you're used to the Glock trigger. Smooth, straight to the rear. Shine that up a little bit. Put some ammo down range, and you have a Glock trigger, which is good. So my buddy's got the Trigicon SRO on here. I would like to see options for like the 509T or like the Acro Steiner clamp on red dots. That would be good to know that at least somebody's making some sort of thing for that. So also the question is, the shim, is that going to last? Is it going to operate as it should? All right, so shot some rounds through it, never coughed once. I was always kind of mindful of it. Hey, how's that extractor going to operate or whatever? But it seems to be pretty darn good. I'm not going to put a whole bunch of rounds on it because it's my friend's gun, but never coughed once. Ate everything. I didn't run, I just ran round nose ammo through it, so there is that. One thing that was brought to my attention by going back and forth through the platforms, even with the Surefires on both of them, the optics, I don't think it was that much of a weight difference for the optics, but I did notice that this feels lighter. It feels like it would be more comfortable carrying and everything. So I was like, well, I need to weigh this. That the Gen 6 frame, no backstrap, nothing, stripped, comes in at 3.45 ounces, whereas the Gen 5 comes in at 4.20. So there is a difference that you can tell, and enough to say, hey, I need to go weigh this. But there's another difference between those two generations. So my final thoughts on this, I was super happy with it. I was surprisingly happy with it. I was so afraid that they were going to change so much that it would scare away all of us that have been accustomed to the older generations, but they didn't. Throughout shooting it, I was pleasantly surprised. It kept up with the Gen 5, with the familiarity with the older grip kind of contours and stuff like that. It wasn't that far behind the performance of the Gen 5 I was shooting against it. It was only about like a half a second, a little bit more. It was an average, probably a half a second. But I know once I get used to the contour, it would be great. I definitely want one. So earlier I mentioned that there was an issue with the Gen 6. Well, here it is. I'm liking this thing. The issue for me is that I might have to trade a gun for one. So there it is. There it is. What is it? It's it. What is it? So back to your regularly scheduled program. But I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do before I recommend to anybody. I say we wait to see how well the extractor system works, aftermarket support. Once we start seeing parts that we can tune and everything the way we want them personalized. A big one is the optic cut or optic plate system. So I just want to put that out there before I say, yeah, man, go get it. I was extremely happy shooting it. But before I purchase, I'm waiting on those two things to be fulfilled, those two prophecies. Does the plate system work? Does the extractor work? Everything else is superb. I really was happy shooting it. But that's my take on it. Hope you enjoyed. Great to have you back again. Thanks for staying this long. Hope to see you soon. We'll have some more videos coming up. Hit the like if you liked it. Subscribe. Hit the bell. And we'll see you soon. I love you and God bless. Glock loves you too.